الأستاذ سعود. في 80 رحلة الأيام والأعوام روى الموسى أن صديقا قال له بعد تقاعده من الوظيفة الحكومية إن المؤرخين لا يتقاعدون. وأضاف الموسى من عنده أن جميع الذين أدركتهم حرفة الكتابة لا يتقاعدون. وقد أنجز الموسى فعلا أعمالا ضخمة في سنوات تقاعده تطبيقا لقاعدة حياته الكبرى: كانت الكتابة مدار حياتي وقدرها غير المكتوب. وكنت أعتبر كل نشاط خارج ذلك الإطار نوعا من خلسة المختلس أو الخروج على القواعد والمسلمات. أيها السادة، الآن سيجري تقديم مداخلتين حول تجربة موسى البحثية. الأولى تقدمها الباحثة البريطانية كيرستي مونتغومري. وللتعريف بالباحثة، Kirsty Montgomery is a PhD candidate at the University of Chicago, where she is studying modern British history. She has published several articles, including encyclopedia entries on the Middle East wars, and she has spoken at conferences across the United States. Ms. Montgomery.
First of all, I would like to thank the Mousa family for making me part of their family this week. I'm very grateful indeed. Jordan is a beautiful country, but most importantly, the people are beautiful too. I've been to Petra, Wadi Rum, Aqaba, and the Dead Sea. It's been truly wonderful, and I thank you all. I shall begin. In March 2004, the London Times published an article entitled Lawrence of Arabia's Lessons on the Iraq War, under the subtitle headed The Wisdom of T. Lawrence, a clutch of notable sayings. The newspaper reported a massive surge in sales of the 7 Pillars of Wisdom, stating that what was truly invaluable about Lawrence's approach was his determination to understand the Arab mindset, and that his genius was in the pains that he took to do so. Simultaneously, the cause was taken up in the United States, where Lawrence has become required reading in the military. It seems as though Lawrence's story is far from over. Lawrence of Arabia is one of the most fascinating and perplexing men in British and Middle Eastern history. To many, he represents a fine British hero who took up the country's burden and led the Arabs to claim victory over the Ottomans. Later, Lawrence retired from public life after believing that the British betrayed the Arabs. However, contradictory opinions exist to this day as to whether he was a hero or an impostor. Suleiman Mousa's work of genius, T. Lawrence, An Arab View, was published in 1966 and translated into English, French and Japanese. Mousa wrote the text after he became convinced that although there were many books written to praise Major T. Lawrence and others written to discredit him, all of them exaggerated his part in the Arabic revolt and failed to do justice to the Arabs themselves. In T. Lawrence, An Arab View, Mousa showed the Arabs' point of view about battles and events of the Arab revolt, and also his book came in response to 7 Pillars of Wisdom written by Lawrence himself, which did not give the Arabs their due credit. Mousa showed that Arabs fought in large numbers in the revolt against the Ottoman Turkish rule to gain independence and freedom, that the Arabs were the ones who fought and struggled, while Lawrence was merely an officer like any other in the British Army. Dr. Albert Boutros, a professor of English at the University of Jordan, translated the book into English. Mousa utilised many Arabic and Western references for the book's writing. To this day, his book remains the only one that shows the Arabic viewpoint. It has left a deep impact on all researchers interested in Lawrence. Hence, the book had won global reputation and became a reference to researchers like myself about the subject of Lawrence and the Great Arab Revolt of World War I. This presentation then is in honour of Suleiman Mousa and will examine T. Lawrence's life. In particular, it will focus on the events of his life that invited criticism, Lawrence's upbringing, his writings and his involvement in the Arab Revolt. Through critical analysis of literature written by and on Lawrence, it is possible to understand why Lawrence's complex and contradictory character remains such an enigma, and why Suleiman Mousa's work is as important today as it was in 1966. T. Lawrence then was born in North Wales in 1888. As a teenager, he was educated at Oxford High School and later at Jesuit College, Oxford, where he read history. After reading Charles Doughty's Travels in Arabia Deserta, Lawrence studied the Arabic language and in 1909 travelled through Syria to collect material for his history honours thesis. Lawrence took a senior scholarship to work as an assistant on an archaeological site at Carchemish on the Euphrates between 1910 and 1914. On the eve of war, Lawrence went as a civilian to do reconnaissance for the British government in the Sinai Peninsula. And once war broke out, Lawrence entered British intelligence and went to Cairo. With Arab agitation towards the failing Ottoman Empire rising, the British realised the advantage of supporting the Arabs to harness their restlessness against the Turks and the Germans. The British appointed Lawrence as the official person attached to Prince Faisal due to his knowledge of the language and the terrain. For 2 years, Lawrence became embroiled in the Arab revolt, as documented by Lawrence in 7 Pillars of Wisdom. And after the British took Damascus in 1918, Lawrence received a great deal of credit for the success of the revolt. Lawrence was made colonel as a sign of his military achievement. The last 10 years of Lawrence's life were spent writing, reading, and serving as a technical and personnel advisor to the British military. Additionally, 2 other passions emerged in his life: motorcycles and the discovery of a tiny Dorset cottage where he wrote his best-known book, 7 Pillars of Wisdom. After his death, Lawrence, the legend, lived on. He appeared on the front of Boys magazine in 1958 and Tintin, Valiant and Knockout in 1963. Additionally, Lawrence was found in Brooke Bond tea cards and cigarette cards. Most famously, he appeared on the front of the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's album. From the early days of his death in 1935, there was spontaneous grief, not only in Britain but worldwide. Henceforth, his book, 7 Pillars of Wisdom, has never left the shelves and is published in 17 languages. Lawrence describes his involvement in the Arab revolt in the book 7 Pillars of Wisdom. Most of the contemporary criticism of Lawrence, including the excellent writings of Suleiman Mousa, centres around whether 7 Pillars of Wisdom is a piece of history or a work of fiction. While there have been many claims that 7 Pillars of Wisdom is a literary genius, it has also come under harsh criticism for portraying fantasy as reality. Many questions concern the book 7 Pillars of Wisdom and its screen version, Lawrence of Arabia. One question in particular was addressed by Suleiman Mousa. Did Lawrence single-handedly lead the attack on Aqaba, the Turkish-held garrison on the Red Sea? I visited Aqaba yesterday, and it is very beautiful, Jamila. Suleiman Mousa wrote much about the capture of Aqaba in June 1917. In fact, he astutely concluded that had it not been for Alda Abu Taib, the Aqaba expedition, which opened the wide doors of fame for Lawrence, would never have taken place. The film Lawrence of Arabia portrayed Lawrence as essentially the brainchild and ringleader of the raid on Aqaba. However, other historians such as David Fromkin, in his book A Peace to End All Peace, shared Suleiman Mousa's concerns and attacked Lawrence for fabricating the event. He concluded, Lawrence possessed many virtues, but honesty was not one of them. He passed off his fantasies as the truth. Fromkin also agrees with Suleiman Mousa that Alda Abu Taib had in fact won the victory, but since his name was not easily pronounced by the Western world, historians later said Lawrence took Aqaba. Interestingly, in the last few days, historian Martin Houston has found evidence that Suleiman Mousa was in fact correct. Aqaba was not taken by Lawrence. In summary, it seems as though T. Lawrence will remain as one of those personalities who continues to baffle and to a certain extent anger historians. Yet his hero status remains. His bust stands in St Paul's Cathedral in London alongside those of Nelson and Wellington. And his book continues to be read worldwide. As such, Suleiman Mousa's devotion to uncovering the truth about Lawrence is as relevant now as it was 80 years ago. British historian Jeremy Wilson wrote of Suleiman Mousa last year. Suleiman Mousa's work had a deep and lasting influence over T. Lawrence scholarship. It showed how different those events looked through Arab eyes and taught us to question the assumption that things happened, only or indeed at all because Lawrence wanted them to happen. I believe that in the long run, Western and Arab historians will reach a common view of the history of the Arab revolt, based on all the evidence that has survived. By challenging the accepted Western view, Suleiman Mousa played an important part in that process. For that, he deserves lasting recognition. 50 years after the publication of Suleiman Mousa's T.E. Lawrence and Arab View, there is still no scholarly competition. Suleiman Mousa's text is unique in that it deals comprehensively with Lawrence and the Arab Revolt from an Arab perspective. All other texts on Lawrence, including those published this year, focus on the Arab Revolt from a Western perspective. For this reason, myself and the Mousa family are in the process of getting the book republished in the United States. I have absolutely no doubt that the book will be as widely, if not more widely, received as it was in 1966. It's been a great honour to speak to all of you. Thank you. Shukran.